When I first heard about the FX2, my reaction was, why? Like, why not just update the FX3? That's what everyone wants. Like, we already had the FX30 as the entry point to Sony's cinema line. The FX3 is still a beast, so why create a whole nother camera that kind of lives right between them? But after spending about a week testing this, shooting in Hawaii, doing side-by-sides with the FX3, I actually kind of get it. It's not trying to replace anything, it's actually just carving out its own little lane. But before we get into the details, here's a quick little spec rundown for my camera nerds out there. You know who you are. So with this camera, you're getting a full frame 33 megapixel Exmor R sensor. It shoots 4K up to 60 frames per second, but that mode is cropped, just so you know. You got 422 10-bit internal recording, shooting in S-Log3 at Cinetone with both all intra and then long GOP options, just like FX3. There's also dual base ISO at 800 and 4000 as opposed to the 12,800 on the FX3. And it actually includes Sony's AI-powered autofocus with subject detection for humans, animals, and objects. And yes, it's got an EVF now, even though it's permanently attached. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then confirming that pricing on this, we weren't sure, but now we know pricing is $2,699 USD. All right, so let's talk about how it actually performs. And this isn't the FX2, we had to send it back. This is just the FX3 to make this setup more interesting. Now, physically, this camera looks like an FX3, but don't expect your cages to fit because there are some minor differences. For example, the grip is deeper, which honestly, I think it feels better in hand. So I feel like they took some feedback that people had on the FX3 and they actually applied it here to the FX2, which is a good thing. But between the new button layout, the cooling vents, and then slightly tweaked design, this thing is just subtly different. Obviously, the biggest difference here is that massive EVF. Personally, don't love it. It's just stuck on there. Like, no matter if you plan on using it or not, it's just there. And for me, I think a lot of the time it kind of just got in the way. So maybe if it's like a super bright sunny day and you need to check your exposure, whatever it might be, you want to review footage, or if you're coming from stills, you're taking photos, maybe that's a plus. But for video shooters, I don't know, I think most of the time an EVF is kind of an afterthought. So having it permanently attached there, don't love it. But I think they were just getting that feedback from some of the higher end shooters who are using EVFs quite a bit. So I don't know. I'll let you decide if that's a good call or not. Now, one thing I really do love is the dedicated photo video switch. It's so much easier than going through the menu and switching from video to photo mode. They also added auto rotation to the LCD, which is perfect for vertical shooting. So as soon as you rotate your camera, the menu rotates with it. They've also brought in the Big 6 UI pulled from Sony's like higher end cameras like the Venice, and I think the Burano has it. It shows shutter, ISO, aperture, white balance, audio, and then media just right up front. So it's not really something that's like unique to the FX2, but I think it's actually going to make the jump from people who are maybe starting with that camera and then slowly upgrading to an FX3, a Burano, a Venice, just so you can kind of keep that menu system consistent. Now, the FX2 gets Sony's new AI processing chip. And yeah, I was skeptical. I mean, they had that on the A1 Mark II that we tested a few months ago. And I didn't feel like there was a huge difference when I tested that camera, but on the FX2, it was actually pretty noticeable. So I don't know if there was some changes or updates that came in between the A1 II and then the FX2, but it performed really well. Autofocus, it's faster, it's more reliable, and it understands, I think, what you're shooting. So faces, eyes, animals, bodies, it's kind of like it's reading your mind, even though it's not. And compared to the FX3, I felt like it was a pretty noticeable step up. Now, the sensor on this thing is actually insanely sharp. And because of that 33 megapixel sensor, you're getting 7K oversampling with full pixel readout. There's actually a shot of an Airstream trailer. It's from the movie Jurassic World, if you've seen that. And you can literally count the rivets on the side of that, which I feel like you can't do with every single camera. A lot of the time it's actually blurring that out. You don't get that detail. And then if you zoom in on this chicken's face, you can actually see every single feather, like all these details. So it's sharp, but it's not too sharp. It still feels really natural. It's not overly digital. And that's something I immediately noticed after we started reviewing that footage. And color grading, super smooth. I shot everything in S-Log3, pulled up the shadows pretty hard actually, and there was barely any noise. Honestly, very fun footage to grade, and the files feel sturdy. I feel like it performed a bit better even than the FX3 footage I'm used to color grading. Now, unlike the FX3, you've got dual base ISOs of 800 and 4000 compared to the FX3's 800 and then 12,800. And honestly, I'm cool with it. Like 4000, it handles most low light needs and it looks cleaner than pushing the camera to 12,800 anyway. You'll still see like a little bit of grain at 4000, but it's controlled, nothing distracting, and it looks significantly better than 12,800. So that right there, I think that's going to come down to personal preference, whether you choose an FX2 or an FX3 for the ISO specifically. Again, for me, most of the time, 4000 is plenty. Now, just like with the FX3 and then the rest of the cinema line from Sony, you're still getting pro formats. So 10-bit, 422, S-Cinetone, S-Log3, and then internal support for loading and previewing up to 16 LUTs if you really want to. And honestly, the only real bummer here is that the 4K 60 is cropped, which is obviously not ideal if you're trying to get wider shots and if you shoot a lot of slow motion. It's not great. It basically crops it into the equivalent of a Super 35 sensor. But honestly, besides that, everything feels pretty complete for a sub $3,000 camera. Now, something that actually did surprise me was the dynamic active stabilization. I didn't have a gimbal at all while I was in Hawaii. I did everything handheld. I did quite a few tests, just walking on smooth grass, being in the back of a bumpy truck, and even in some of those more extreme scenarios where there's so much movement happening, somehow the footage actually came out super stable. You can definitely see a little like vibration, warping, like the trepidations are there, right? But it's not jello. And so having the active dynamic stabilization as opposed to just active stabilization and then standard that you would get on an FX3, I mean, that's pretty great. It performed super well. So if you're doing a lot of run and gun stuff, I think that's going to save you in a lot of cases where you don't have a gimbal or even a tripod and you just want to have a nice static shot. You're not going to see as much movement as you normally would. And if that's still not enough, you've got that gyro metadata for post stabilization inside of Catalyst Browse, but honestly, I didn't even feel like I needed it. Now, just like with the FX3, on the FX2, audio is covered. You have an XLR through the top handle if you do buy it with that top handle. I think that comes in at $3,100 USD. If you don't have that top handle, you still have that 3.5mm jack on the side, and then whatever you want to plug into the top of that multi-interface shoe. My only gripe here really is that the mic and the headphone jacks are exposed. Like there's no covers or flaps on that. And it rains a lot in Hawaii. I actually got caught out when it was raining pretty hard. So not sure how water resistant those ports are, but I definitely was worried about it where I probably wouldn't be as concerned on an FX3 since those are covered. So it might not bother you, but just want to point that out, something worth noting. So back to the big question, why did Sony even make the FX2? Like, what's the point? Personally, I think it's about just bridging gaps. I think it's the perfect like hybrid tool for creators who want cinematic video with just enough photo features and a little polish from Sony's cinema line. And honestly, I'm kind of worried about Sony because at $26.99, it undercuts the FX3 by quite a bit. And for some creators, that price shift is enough to actually tip the scale. So if I were to guess, I think they're gonna launch the FX2. I think you're gonna see a lot of people who already have the FX3 go and try out the FX2. And then I'm anticipating an FX3 Mark II, and those same people are gonna go back and buy that as well. So maybe it's a strategic move, I don't know, but hopefully that clears it up as to, you know, where this camera specifically fits in the product line. Now, would I sell my FX3 for this? Probably not, but if I were starting fresh or I had the FX30, this would be a really, really great upgrade. That's the FX2. It's not revolutionary, it's not replacing anything, but maybe it's the missing link that you didn't know you needed. Maybe it'll make a great B cam next to your FX3 or your FX6 or FX9. I guess that's up to you. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you guys want to actually get all of our LUTs and presets that we use, I've also dropped that in the description. Go check that out. And as always, if you have any further questions, please let me know.